In this episode of the AI Native Attempt, we're laying out the whole plan. We're going to define what an AI native company actually is, distinguish between AI agents and automations, explain how both automations and agents are going to fit into the overall business structure when we're done, if there ever is a done, and then prioritize a list of automations to start building. If you've ever wondered how to take a business and start layering in and leveraging AI, this is the episode for you. My name is Keith Mooring, and I am documenting my journey of turning a one-person side hustle into an AI native business, where AI-powered automations and systems do most of the work. My hope is that the wins and losses along the way serve as a roadmap for other small businesses working to scale and grow in the era of AI. Welcome to the AI Native Attempt. This episode, I'm actually very, very excited about, largely because we're going to lay out the vision and the plan, how we're going to take this side hustle and build all the AI and automation into it to make it this AI native company. So the first things first is we need to define what AI native actually is. So if you haven't read it, there's a book called AI First. It's by Adam Brotman and Andy Sack. Definitely recommended. It's where I first heard of the term AI native. There's also AI first and so on and so forth. So read that book. It's a really interesting background with a bunch of interviews early on with a lot of the people who are shaping this AI space. But so they introduced the term of AI native, and essentially what AI native means is an AI native organization is one that is built on the foundation of AI, with artificial intelligence as a core component of its strategy, operations, and ultimately products or services that it provides. In other words, if we're kind of paraphrase or explain that, AI native is using AI to run most of the organizations with humans in the loop. And that's kind of how the vision, where we're going to think about it. In other words, humans set the strategy, they set the direction, and they define the processes. AI then steps in, and AI with automation will do 85% of the heavy lifting. The actual execution, the production work that a lot of times humans have to do. But in this case, we're going to try to get AI and the automations to take on a lot of that work. And then the last mile of it is where humans come back into the loop. So they review, they polish, they add personality, they leverage judgment, they're layering in insights and opinions. And ultimately, they're the ones approving what the AI is creating and then releasing it into the world. So that's all good. But what does it actually look like when it's implemented within your organization? In other words, for playthrough, what I'm going to try to do and what this whole channel is about is I'm going to create a team of specialized agents to oversee and manage parts of the company. In the simplest form, I am going to create agents. Now, there are a variety of different ways to create agents. There are highly complex agents. For example, those that can go out and research the top rates, then book you a flight, book you a hotel, and book you travel, all that. We're not getting into that. That is way over the top of my head. And honestly, probably overkill for a lot of what we're trying to do. Instead, we're talking about highly useful automations and agents that we can implement as part of marketing, sales, and service. So in the simplest form, agents essentially are AI that have a collection of skills, and then they receive context or some sort of communication, and they know what to do with each of those skills and when to use them. I'll give you a very simple, easy to understand example. Switch screens here. Okay. So hypothetically, we have a Slack channel set up, and we have that Slack channel directly connected to an AI agent that's built out in Make or NADAT, if you'd like. What's going to happen is a user will jump into that channel and post a message. In this case, write me a blog post for my editorial account. That message is going to be packaged up and then sent off to that AI agent. Going to receive the message, and that AI agent, again, that's a mouthful. All this stuff is a mouthful. But it's going to take that message, analyze it, figure out what exactly it's asking for. But then also that AI agent has a variety of skills built into it. So for example, it has a skill for, and knows how to write a blog post. draft a case study, create social shares. And based on the context of the message and what it understands about it and the instructions that you've given it, it's going to then go and pick the skill that makes the most sense. And then it's going to pass off some information, a packet of information to that skill. And that skill is ultimately going to be executed on. And each of these automations is a skill. They're specifically designed processes that can run autonomous, taking an input, process it in some way, and then consistently generate an output. Examples would be blog content creation, case study generation, image generation, contact research, sales presentation building, et cetera, et cetera. With each of these, there is a clear process and a defined definition of done. Now, in terms of order of operations, which comes first, agents or automations? Skills have to come first. The initial focus of this channel is going to build out a library of these automations or skills that when we're ready, the agents can then be built to tap into each of those skills. Okay, so the best way to understand how this agents and these automations fit into an organization is to look at an organizational chart, or if for my EOS fans out there, the Entrepreneur Operating System, an accountability chart. So I'm in a platform called 90.io. It's an EOS thing. It's actually pretty awesome in terms of just how we can set up. I'm not an EOS person. I've never really fully implemented it at an organization, but I've read the book Traction. And a lot of the best practices and principles and teachings in here align very tightly with how we need to think about the structure, the agents, and the automations that we're going to build. So looking at this accountability chart is you have the visionary and integrator. In other words, the CEO, person who kind of lays the roadmap and how we're going to go forward. Integrators, the chief operations officer, make sure that everything gets done the way it should get done. Below that, then you have several leadership levels. So sales and marketing, you've got operations. Usually there's a finance one here. And then I've added a third one that we'll get into in a little bit. But underneath each of those leadership levels, then you would have quote unquote departments. So you have a marketing department, you have a sales department, you have a partnerships department. And then within each of those, the departments have specializations. Now, there's content marketing, there's social, there's paid, email, that kind of thing. Within each of those departments are a series of tasks or skills. In other words, the list here, this bulleted list, is our defined list of automations that we want to build. Each of these, each bullet would be its own standalone automation. And then ultimately, what we're going to build, as soon as we get those automations in place, is we'd like to build the agent that controls those automations. In other words, we have an agent, this whole line here, place my face, because I'm essentially doing all of this manually now, or in many cases, not doing it, which is part of the reason why we're doing what we're doing. But each of these would be an agent. I'd have a content marketing agent, a social agent, paid agent, email agent, and it would have access to and the ability to tap into each of these defined skills or automations. And you can see how we really expand these things, how this whole thing really plays out. It gets wildly complex very quickly. So let me zoom out here. And you can see that it can't fit on one screen. But we have each of these would be essentially an agent with all of their defined roles and skills and capabilities. And so we got content marketing, sales, service, so on and so forth. Sales has its own version of it. So it's, in this case, for playthrough, it's going to be mini golf sales and outreach, sponsorship sales. And then we have partnerships. So promoting and getting affiliate revenue and referral revenue through partnerships. From there, you've got operations, which will get into service and support, and then development of the product itself. But the one I really want to spend a minute on here and talk about the importance to this overall agent automation structure that we're building is this tracking and reporting component. This one is critical because the systems and processes that we're going to be building as part of this need input and data. And that's what this component of this is all designed to be. We'll have a website traffic analyst agent, a platform usage agent, sales pipeline agent, and then feedback and analysis agent. And under each of those, they'll have specific sets of skills: website traffic review, content engagement, conversion rates, pipeline volume and potential, deal stage progress. All of this, the reporting that these things are going to do, is going to be sent and fed into all of these different agents. And based on the goals and where we want to be versus what the analytics and data is reporting, is going to help these agents determine what action step to take next. We can build this. We can create the agents to do all of this work, but we need that data source in there to inform and feed and guide the rest of the organization. So this is going to be very important to the whole scheme, the whole plan that we've got in place. All right, now, so what I'll do here is I'll export this and put this in the show notes so you can download and take a look at it and see exactly how this whole thing works. But we need to take this list and we need to prioritize it. I would love to have all of these done right now. The reality is it's going to take time to build out this arsenal of skills as AI powered automation, and then build out the agents on top of it. And we need to prioritize them based on two main factors. One, what's the impact on the bottom line and the revenue? And two, how ready are we to get these things launched and live? So we have this list of things that we need to build. How do we prioritize? Where can we direct our focus that's going to have the biggest impact as soon as possible? And then use that to guide the automation process. It's going to take a while. I'd love to have all these things done right now, but the reality is it's not going to happen. And we need to take it step by step by step. To do that, I've created a tool. It's called the AI Automation Prioritizer. And essentially what you would do, and I'll put a link to this again in the show notes and everything. But first step is to enter in all of the tasks that you want to automate. So I've got a full list. I think I have, it looked like 52 tasks built into this. By the way, I built this tool using Replit 3. Awesome. I had the idea. I gave it the concept and a blueprint for what I wanted to do. We went back and forth, tweaking it and optimizing it. It's hosted on Replit right now, so I don't even have to worry about hosting it. If you get a chance, these things are amazing to build out these cool little tools to do either internal work or make externally focused and as a lead generation type tool. But all that notwithstanding, so I have them all built out, 52 of these things. Next step is I'm going to go through and rate all of them on 6 main factors. In other words, 6 impact factors, which are: how much time does this task take for me to do each month on a scale of 1 to 5? We put context in here around how to think about the ratings themselves. So how much time does this thing take me to do? What is the impact on revenue? How effective or useful is this specific task to driving revenue into the business? Run out of revenue, we don't have a business. So prioritizing those automations first makes sense. Output value. How many different ways can we use whatever the output of that operation or that automation is? So for example, with content, the repurposing of that content is high. We can use it on all different channels, all different media. So think about it in terms of how much can we reuse the outputs of these automations? How complex is that process or that task to do? So for example, content generation, again, we'll just use that as an example because it's easy to understand. I may have to go research a topic and I have to find SEO keywords. And then I have to go look for past articles on that topic and then talk to some subject matter experts, then write an outline and so on and so forth. There's a lot of steps that go into creating content every time. In this case, we're going to rate it based on how complicated and how many steps and technologies are involved in that process. What type of skills are required to do it? Is it a senior level thing? In other words, does someone have to have some high advanced experience and training to do it? Or is it something that's more entry and mid-level? And then I think one of my favorite ones is, how often is like some of this process or the process as a whole never done currently? In other words, if you're nurturing a lead, how often are Sales reps going into your case study library, pulling out the most relevant one and finding articles and resources that are relevant to them and pulling them in to any sort of nurturing that goes into it. Probably not very often. So what part of this or the whole thing as a whole never gets done? And if we could automate it and enhance what's being done, how much more value will that bring to that task? So I've already gone through, I'm not going to bore you with this, but I've already gone through and rated all of these across all 6 factors. The next section is rating each of these based on readiness. In other words, how much of we need to automate this task exists. Do we have a process? And to what level is that thing defined? So number five would be we have a full statement of process documented and it's used regularly versus we've never done this before, have no idea how to approach it. Rating it on that kind of level because we do need a process, a very defined process to build the automations. What kind of context exists? In other words, the AI is only good as the context we provide. So how much of the assets and resources needed to optimize that output exist already that we can tap into and utilize as part of the automation? How accessible is this stuff? Is it on a shared drive? Does the technology we need to do this specific task have an API connection that we can tap into? That stuff matters a lot because if we have to go around, do some circumnavigating or hacking together, or it's just we can't get access to it and we need to move it into another system, that all takes time. In other words, the automation is going to take longer to build, longer before it actually delivers value to your organization. And then also, is there a person already in the organization that can manage this? They understand the systems, they understand the expectation, what the outcome is supposed to be. And can they take and utilize this automation that we would create to start generating this stuff? So again, I've gone through, rated across all these 4 factors, but here's the fun part. So once it's done, once you've gone through that work, and it does take a minute, depending on how many tasks and you're going to evaluate and try to prioritize. But what you get at the end of this is a prioritized quadrant of what to work on, when, and why. Now, it's also worth noting real quick. I'm going to go back a couple sections. Each of these factors are not weighted the same. In other words, the time factor is definitely weighted heavier than ball drop risk or skill suitability. We had to rate them differently because if we can save time on some of this stuff, it's obviously a lot more valuable than dealing with the complexity of it. So each of these factors is weighted. The same thing goes for the impact, process maturity, context access. These things are very, very important to readiness versus accessibility. Also very important. Human in the loop, not as important, but obviously you still want one. I'm a big advocate for that. I don't want to misconstrue that as you don't need a human to do this stuff, but it's not as important from the automation perspective in terms of building it as process maturity is, for example. But now I've gone through and each of these kind of follows these quadrants. We got the automate now, impact high, readiness high. Start prepping. The impact is high, but the readiness isn't quite there yet. So if we're going to prioritize tasks, automate now are the ones to focus on first. Then we would get into like start prepping. There are also the quick wins. In other words, we've got everything ready, but the impact isn't overly high. Those are obviously valuable there. And then revisit later. These are just kind of put these in the sandbox for later usage. Now you can hover over each of these and to see exactly which they relate to. And you can see down here in the list of priorities, the impact score, the readiness score, and then the cumulative index, and kind of prioritize them based on all of these factors. I'm very excited about this tool. I think this tool is very cool, especially as you're going to map out exactly where you need to go and where the biggest impact of this AI stuff could come in. Now, the other thing you can do with this tool that I like a lot is I want to look at it from, okay, marketing only. So now I've restricted this whole section down just to my marketing tasks. And I can still see exactly what I need to prioritize. Or if I'm going to give sales their tasks, here's where we're going to focus there on sales. So utilize this tool. It's free to use. You can download the report, send it to yourself, or request help with building the automations. But this is a This is a clear prioritized list of things that we need to focus on where we're going to. So in our case, charity outing resource content takes the cake. We're going to start there. And then content repurposing, how to take advantage of this content and how to repurpose on social, email, so on and so forth. Mini golf outreach will be third. And these are the three things that we're going to spend the next essentially 3 episodes focused on is one automation for each of these tasks and then kind of build that to our library. And then as we get the library of these automations built, then we'll start layering agents on top of it and get this thing working real smart and using AI to guide and optimize performance of the company. Okay, that was a lot. Threw a lot at you. I'm going to put the resources in the show notes so you've got access to those. But you need to start out with and kind of now that we've got the vision for what is agents, what is automation, how does that fit into an organization? What does an org chart need to look like? Getting started there, that's your first step, is building out that org chart with those layers and those departments and then ultimately the tasks. And then once you get those tasks defined, come into this tool, prioritize them based on the impact and readiness. Once you have that defined, now you're ready to start building. And that's where we're going to be going with the next few episodes, building out these automations and actually putting them into practice, into real life situations, and actually start churning some of this stuff out. So very excited. If you stuck around to the end, great. I appreciate it. Remember to, if you can, like it or subscribe to the channel. We also have a newsletter that we send out with the video and the kind of the quick highlights and talking points every episode. So hope to see you on the next episode, and thanks for watching.